Happy Halloween. Welcome to Field's Math Education Forum today. Since fall, all of the K-12 schools and higher education widely adopted moving teaching and learning online. And as educators, parents, and teachers are facing a lot of new challenges. That's why today we're gathered here to talk about and discuss teaching and learning mathematics online. So today's event will be hosted by me and my colleague, Mona Lourizifar. I'm a steering committee member for Field's Math Education Forum. I'm also a math professor at Humboldt College. My colleague, Mona, I'll let you introduce yourself. Mona, you here? Well, Mona is my associate dean at Humboldt College, and she works with math department and also research skills.
Perfect. I'm here actually just joining. I wasn't able to unmute myself. The moderator just allowed me. Good morning, everyone. We're happy to be here with you. Well, welcome to the MathEd Forum on October 31st.
Thanks, Mona. Oops. So although we're meeting today online, but we would like to take this opportunity and begin by acknowledging that the land on which we gather is part of the treaty lands and territory of the Mississauga of the Credit. We would like to acknowledge and express gratitude to the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation of the Anishinaabe peoples who continue to share their ancestral lands with us. And before we start today's event, we would like to set up a few ground rules. Please leave your microphone and your video off unless you're sharing. If you experience any technical difficulties, please use chat to connect with our moderator. But by the way, today, working at the backstage is Charles Anifals. He's going to moderate the chat and assist with our discussion activities. We would expect everyone to engage in respectful discourse. If you have different opinions or ideas, please express it in a respectful manner. Our goal is to create a positive and collegial atmosphere today. Thank you. Next few slides, I'll pass to Mona.
Okay, thank you so much. Next, we have the reports of the various mathematics committee. From CMS, we have an upcoming session December 3rd to 8th. The link is provided here in the PowerPoint slides for you, and there are two engaging talks from members that are quite known to the Fields Committee. Next on the report is OMCA, and the regular meetings are continuing as well, and you can contact them for further interest. CMESG is also heading to a panel to open meeting again in December. Details are to be posted later on. OAME, as many of you may know, has joined AFEMO with work on the new elementary mathematics curriculum, and it's running at full speed. There have been various webinars in both official languages for that, and the materials all available for you at ontariomath.support to look at it. Next on the agenda is a Margaret Sinclair Awards, and this would be coming up later on. You can contact Judy at the email provided below. The deadline for these submissions are December 31st. Thank you. And here's today's schedule for you. We have a jam-packed agenda. We start with the presentations shortly. There are 3 engaging talks this morning, and then breakout groups where we can really discuss and brainstorm various ideas and concepts as they relate to the earlier presentations. There is a debrief between 11 to 11:20, and we hope to break for lunch for all members 11:30 to 12 o'clock. Then we move into the afternoon sessions with 3 other presentations, breakout rooms, and a debrief. We hope to adjourn at 1:30. Okay, and I go ahead and perhaps introduce our next speaker to you today. we're good with our schedule. So that's great, moving fast. Devices and technology. With the transition to online, this has become a hot topic for educators. Today with us, we have Diane Tupilo. She's an assistant teaching professor at Ontario Tech University. Her areas include mathematics pedagogy, integration of technology in education, and getting perseverant pre-service teachers to learn how to code. And without further ado, I'll introduce Diane to you. Welcome, Diane.
Thank you very much. Do you want me to do a little presentation about my session now? Okay, just give a second. I'll share my screen. And you're going to see what you're not supposed to see. Okay. So in choosing tools and devices, I always stress about, thinking about the learner and the math first. Those have to be our core, not just the cool technology. So in that vein, I've looked at research on best practices in online learning, and I highly recommend the book at the bottom, but we really need to be clear about what students need to know if we're online. They're gonna probably learn less, so we have to focus on what's important. We want to have that variety of instructional strategies towards learning goals that feed into engagement, it feeds into inclusion. We want that, oops, sorry, this is the one I want, so I'll put it into presentation mode. Sorry about that. Same idea, but here are some goals, some ideas about different instructional strategies that have been shown to be effective both in the classroom and online. Active learning opportunities, switching modalities, if it's listening or something like that, to keep engaging the students, the meaningful and space practice, always keeping engagement in mind. And I know that's one of the other topics, designing for inclusion, thinking about equity as we're designing, thinking about flexibility, thinking about building social connections and communities so people feel like they're in a classroom, and early and frequent low stakes assessment. In terms of learner, we want to think about students' access to the tool. Does it use a lot of bandwidth? Do they have to pay extra for it? We have to consider their learning of the tool. No matter what the technology, no matter how good it is, there's always a learning curve, and some students are going to have a much greater learning curve than others depending on their past experience. So how do we support that? Does it offer choice and flexibility? Are we building communities? So you see that communities coming up in a lot of different places. And then we want to think about the tools. So Driver in 2020, some early research on the pandemic, saw that teachers were going back to very traditional procedural math. So what tools can we use online that allow the solutions to develop? So if we just give them the whole solution to a problem right off the bat, it's harder for students to follow. Writing seems to be important, handwriting. So what tools allow us to do that? Opportunities for collaborative problem solving, exploring math concepts, reasoning and proving. We still want to continue those. And again, Driver's early research suggests that teachers went back to weren't including this much in that emergency online stuff. So how do we move forward and keep those great mathematical practices, teaching practices that we've been developing into an online environment? And that is what we're going to talk about, and the choice of, which problems are in our discussion forum, which are problems for you? What are tools that you've used that have really helped you meet those learning goals or helped your learners or are really focused on the math? So it's going to be a discussion of what is most relevant for you. And I have a bunch of ideas from my practice if you want to hear them too. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan. I'm going to share my screen again. That's very interesting points that Diane raised. I'm sure that's going to encourage lots of great discussion afterwards. Our next speaker is, did I miss? Yeah, next speaker is Henry Tam. He's going to talk about academic integrity. So Henry Tam is assistant curriculum leader at Dr. Norman Bethune Collegiate. And over the past 25 years, He has taught in TDSB schools, ranging from technical institutes to more academic collegiates. Welcome, Henry. I'll pass on to you.
Okay, good morning. So thank you for the introduction and thank you for this opportunity to talk about a very important topic. And I'm going to try and share my screen. I think this should work. Is that visible to everyone? Very good. So as Kate has mentioned, I'm a teacher in the Toronto District School Board, probably one of the biggest school boards in North America. And I've been a math teacher for over 25 years. I've lost count. I do have a little, so after 25 years, they give you a little pin. So that's that, they don't even give you anything useful anymore. They used to give us bells, but that's an archaic sort of thing. And I've been teaching math for almost the entirety of that time, even though my own training is actually molecular biology. So for those of you who are biologists, you can see why math has always been easier to get a job teaching at. So the topic of academic honesty. So when the pandemic hit in March, it caught almost all of us off guard, particularly the teachers, because we were just about to go into March break. We thought, okay, after March break, it's a little bit longer and then we'll all go back to school and everything will be fine. No, that did not happen. And so after the dust sort of settled and all of those other things, we then had to think about what we were going to be doing in this sort of online environment. And shortly after trying to sort out all the other logistic sorts of things, the biggest issue that always came up was academic honesty. Now, just to let you know, one of the things that we had a slight advantage with is that before the school year, the government basically said all marks remain the same. So actually, it made things a little bit easier because we were less concerned about that particular aspect. Of course, there were some fallouts that came out of that. But this year, that's not the case. We now have to start from ground zero, and the issue of academic honesty just tops the chart, regardless of where you go. Every time we have a meeting, academic honesty is the first thing that comes up. And so I thought about that and I said, well, let's be a little bit philosophical and figure out, well, what's the big deal about academic honesty? Well, let's see, should I go into presentation mode here? I suppose I should, if I can just figure out how to get into presentation mode. Oh, here we go, present. All right. Okay, so I thought to myself, okay, academic honesty, let's switch it around, is really the quest for the truth. We're trying to figure out the truth about something. And so let's cut to the chase. It's about cheating. I mean, we like to say academic honesty, but it's really about cheating. And I remember this rather interesting incident once, a number of years ago, before the pandemic, just before every final exam, usually someone goes over the PA before the exam just to say some encouraging words to the students as they go into this high stress environment. Well, one year my VP decided that the encouraging method would be a 5-minute listing of all the penalties for cheating. I said, why are you reading this? This is going to crush their spirits. So cheating is a really big issue, particularly because of the technology, the onlineness, and the anonymity. And so really, what are we interested in? We're interested in the issues of integrity. So I keep hearing people talk about integrity. Where's the integrity in this course? And of course, there's also the issue of fairness, because the reality is, depending on your skill set and your technology, you can be better at cheating than other people. That's a weird sort of talking about fairness. So that's why my first prompt is think back and say, well, we can keep fighting this issue of cheating, or can we look at ways that we can change our courses and the way we teach them so that cheating is not an issue? Because I hate to say this, having taught so long, Once you figure one way to stop cheating, they'll come up with another way. And there's always a way. And sometimes I wonder if you spent the amount of time you did figuring out how to cheat actually studying, you'd probably be better off, right? But some kids like that challenge. So the second thing I thought about, and about academic honesty, which is really one of the issues that teachers are thinking about, is predominantly now the issue of time. A lot of people talk about ways to ensure academic honesty, but every method I can think of requires an inordinate amount of time. It already takes a lot of time to design a good evaluation, a really good one that actually measures the things that you're looking at. And it takes an awful lot of time to actually mark these things. I don't know many teachers who would say, you know, marking is my favorite part of teaching. It is not. That's why professors have TAs. Because they do that particular part of it. So time is a huge issue, because if we have to think about ways in order to get at what it is that students actually know, most of the solutions are incredibly time consuming, and we have enough things on our plate. So the second prompt is, how can we figure out what we want to know? What do they know? What do they actually know? And how can we do it in a way that won't kill us? That's really what it's all about. So those are the two prompts that will be used in my discussion about academic honesty. Thank you. Oh, and by the way, in terms of academic honesty, this presentation I stole from someone else. So there's my cue to academic honesty. When I say stole, I meant I stole the template off Google Slides. So this picture, I don't know what this picture is all about. But the honesty part is, those are my actual words. So there you go.
Thank you, Henry. I'll share my screen again when you stop sharing yours.
Oh, there you go.
Thanks. So thanks, Henry, for bringing over your unique perspectives on students' academic integrity. Our next speaker is Mona Nurzifar. As introduced earlier, she is an Associate Dean of Mathematics, Research Skills and Analysis at Humboldt College, where she's responsible for the centralized delivery of mathematics. Without further ado, Mona, please.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Okay. Let me quickly share my screen with everyone and we'll get started. Okay, can you see my screen now? Perfect. Okay, fantastic. I'm here to speak to you on the topic of student engagement. And this is by no means a topic that has one dimension. There are various dimensions to student engagement and what it means. And it's really vague in many sense. How do you define engagement? One of the best definition comes from Philip Shitley. And I'll read it to you. There are three aspects or characteristics to student engagement and what this means. One, they're attracted to their work. These students are interested to do the work. Two, they persist in their work despite challenges and obstacles they face. And number three, they take visible delight accomplishing their work. Why is it important for us as educators to engage the students? Well, those that are highly engaged in courses, they usually pay high attention to classes. They have a high level of commitment. And with these, we know that deeper levels of learning take place and they become lifelong learners. And that's the ultimate goal of every educator. There are three types of student engagement as well. And in the 5-minute talk, we won't be able to discuss all these aspects, but I'll briefly provide an overview. One, behavioral. What does this mean? Behavioral means really participation, attendance. If they've come to your virtual class, they've made the first attempt to be engaged. Number two, emotional, and the emotional aspects of engagement really relate to the teacher, student, and peer-to-peer, as well as the environment, overall experience in the environment for the students. And third is cognitive engagement, and this is really delving into different aspects of motivation, being intrinsic, being extrinsic, and really the investment of one in their self-education. What does it mean this day? We've had to move classes online. I think K to 12 have never been online to this level, to this extent. We have hybrid deliveries now in class, synchronous, and how do we engage our students in this day and age? It's quite a challenge. But one thing that always resonates with me is as a talk Professor Vincent Tinto gave perhaps 5-6 years ago in Toronto. He's a professor at Syracuse University. And he said, we have to tell all our learners that they start the course with 100%. If we tell them they're starting the course with 100%, it's really up to that student to attain and hold on to that 100 as best as they can. I kind of quite like this because it's contrary to my engineering experience in first year of classes, where the professor would say, look around you, half of you won't be here next year. So it really changes the dimension of student engagement. And obviously, with all these aspects that we're discussing today, we're hoping to better prepare students. And one of the other key pieces to this is really arousing curiosity with students. I've put in some guidelines, and over this past fall, I've attended many class visits of my team members at Humber College. And throughout these observations, I've tend to see what works, what doesn't work in the virtual world. And here are some suggestions or guidelines, suggested items. Student-student interactions are important. What does that mean? We have programs that are starting online this fall, and students may not even have the ability to see each other face-to-face for the next few semesters. So the student-student interactions, learning communities becomes very important. Text chat communication interactions, I see students participate in very different levels in the virtual classes that I've attended. Discussion forums, this has been used for many years. I think it was one of the first communication platforms that was used for distance learning and other courses. Audio web conferencing such as Zoom, Blackboard Ultra, all these are helping the students to connect better. And again, another tool, tools would be those online polls where you can engage the students live, such as Mentimeter, Kahoots, and many different tools. What I think works is really setting norms at the beginning of courses, cultivating that belonging, and really making curriculum compelling for students. Designing your classroom agreements so that all voices, all student voices are heard within this new spectrum. And what really works is making your own digital content for these deliveries. Oftentimes publisher slides or other things when my faculty use, rarely, would not have the narrative or the voice that you want to bring to the class. Being authentic. I think it's very different in elementary, high school where student cameras are turned on versus maybe not so much in the post-secondary sector, but having that authentic, being your authentic self as educator really comes through, even though your camera's off. I've sat through classes where that faculty's enthusiasm has come through the lecture without having the ability to see the professor live. Clean virtual spaces, something that's easy for students to navigate, it engages them better. Creating chat rooms or lounges, again, some ideas to help. This next one, DigiCafes, is something that I'm testing at Humber College for one of our programs. And that is creating a digital community or a cafe where students come once a month from a program, meet with administrators, students, alumni of the program. We have guest speakers, and we really try to build an online community to engage our learners and really to seek their feedback on how their learning experience has been so far, so we can improve on that. Being supportive throughout office hours and other aspects, and really planning those interactivity polls, breakout rooms, guided questions that really helps learning. And one thing that's missing for us in the post-secondary sector is that eye contact. As a math educator, my team would tell me that, Mona, I can't see their eye contact. I don't really know if they're lost or we're following along the right path. So I think this is hard in a real classroom setting. You can see your students' eyes, you can follow and and see if they need any further assistance or not. But in the digital world, it's quite different. And I want to leave you last with strengthening student engagement and a couple of questions to really contemplate for the rest of the afternoon. We need to engage them. How do we do that? And it goes back to the core question of what do students want and what really motivates them? So keep these questions. We'll get to the discussion breakout room and we'll discuss this further. Thank you.
Thank you, Mona. Thank you very much. Yeah, as educators, we're trying to engage our students better every day. We try so hard. So thanks, Mona, for the valued points. I'm going to share my screen. So Mona is our last speaker for the morning session. And next, we are going into breakout group. So we'll have 3 topics based on 3 trigger presentations, devices and technology, academic integrity, and student engagement. We will have 2 breakout groups based on each topic. So all of the participants, you will be randomly assigned into breakout rooms. The assigned moderator for each group will introduce themselves when you get in. If you do not feel comfortable with the random assigned topic, you want to join a different group, you may leave the breakout room right away and come back to the main room. Please send a chat message and indicate which of the other 2 topics you would prefer to be in. You will then be reassigned. Now, we will only be allowing reassignment in the first 2 minutes of the breakout. All right. Now, Charles, please help send everyone to breakout groups.
Muro. Sorry, I'm just assigning the folks who want to move. I have you in room 4 though.
But it's supposed to be integrity in room 5 according to Jamboard.
That's interesting. It should be. It is supposed to be room 4.
Oh, I see. Okay. Okay.
Did I send you the wrong link? I'll send you.
No, it's fine. Okay, can you just put me back to room 4 then, please?
I think you should be able to join. You're still in room 4. You just have to.
I am in room 4.
In the bottom right corner, you'll see.
Bottom. No, I don't see. So breakout rooms.
Yeah, and then you click on that.
I was cut off in mid-sentence, but that's okay.
Yeah,
You have your minute. You have to plan it.
Oh yeah, there was a warning. Yeah.
just one question to the organizers. Is it possible that group participants write things into Jamboard, or is it only for the leaders?
It depends on how you set it up, but I didn't have access to mine. I did not have edit permissions for mine. So there's nothing in a Jamboard yet, but I will add them from the notes I took.
Well, my students were able to edit. Well, so
Mine too,
my
yeah.
group members,
Your
not my
practice-
students.
Yeah.
Group members
Group
were able,
member.
sorry, my bad.
Yeah, our group member, so apparently the set as people can only view. I had to change it to people being able to edit so that everyone
Okay.
can
Yeah.
contribute.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, I guess
All right.
I posted the wrong one. I posted the one that they could edit, so sorry.
Well, that worked anyway. So now
So it
everyone's back.
Mhm.
So we had a really great discussions. Well, I observed in my group. So now let's have a debrief. We had 3 topics. I think we'll go by order. We'll have devices and technology and devices first. Academic integrity second, and the last will be student engagement. And for each group, but for each topic, we had 2 groups. So we'll have those 2 groups present and then move on to next topic. That sounds good?
Sure.
All right, so let's start with devices and technology. So maybe Diane, please.
Okay, I don't have a Google Jamboard because I never clued into writing things down. This is one thing online. It's really helpful to have even a student be a note taker. And then again, I could have opened up my own Jamboard, but we'll get that information there. So we had a couple areas of topic. One was the different whiteboards, the electronic whiteboards and how you would use those. So, Jamboard came up, the concept board was introduced, so I have to play more with that. But we talked really about how would you use that. So it's one thing to use it synchronously if you have an online class. We have people who are in classes and, they can't have group students work together. Well, if they have the technology, they could still work together using synchronous technologies like a Jamboard. That whole difference of social distancing in the classroom and trying to build collaboration came up again and again. And technology is a huge issue with that. When it came to the coding, we talked a lot about coding. It's new in the math curriculum. What tools, how do you do this when you don't have any technology, or if you have 5 in the classroom and you know, now they can't work collaboratively. So, you know, how might you do that? We've talked about some great resources I'll put in the chat. And I'll keep doing that after I finish talking. Some of them that came up that allowed things. Talked about using, if you're online or you have tools, you can work collaborative. We've had kids coding in breakout rooms where one person shares the screen and the other people are the navigators that help code. And at the end, they have a product together they can produce. And yeah, I think that was the main ideas. And if I think of anything else, I'll throw it into the chat.
Thanks, Dan. Next, John.
Hey, hi. So for our group, so my prompt was about how we can use devices and technology to support our teaching need and reestablish some of this human connection that's missing now that we are, a lot of us are only online. So there were some great ideas, for example, using a chat function during presentation to see if students have any questions, or another great one was to use breakout rooms and not just the main class, so that students can work with themselves and maybe, you know, bring in also the shyer students that maybe are not as comfortable to participate and in the activity, and also publishing recorded lectures so that students then can watch them offline, and then there's more time in class to actually collaborate and for the dialogue, for really that human connection again. And again, having not even just for the technology, but having a shorter time of lecture so that there's more time for the interactive activities with students. So and I have all of this in my Jamboard that is jam-packed of stuff, and also having a bit of also one-on-one with students more, having office hours, so having that again opportunity to connect with students. And as for tools for math, so using software like Desmos or OneNote came up a lot, where we can share the notebooks and we can work together. So that's another main topic, and also using, you know, tablets. So everything that I noticed a lot of, you know, handwriting is involved there. So, and it's a great way to have that, and really having that connection. And I have also a great point is also to make use PowerPoints, but making them more attractive to students as well. So there's also that point that I can totally agree with that as a student sometimes myself, having that. And also we have some StatRec website, we have Desmos, and we also have another website called, let me get that here, MathEd. So where we have not just the textbook, but also interactive objects online where students can play around and read, experiment. And Desmos, for example, also in statistics, where I can find out and really explore more the math concepts and not just, you know, taking them for granted. There's a lot of hands-on here that can help. And I think that's all we have here. Great discussion.
That's excellent. Thanks, John.
Yep.
So Mary, next yours.
All right, so our group had quite a bit of discussion around a whole bunch of different things. I'll see if I can actually share this Jamboard. Yes, well, actually, no. Should
Kate, you may have to take your slides down for Henry to share his Jamboard.
Sure, we'll do.
I'm going to try. Let's see, what am I trying to share here? Let's see, is this my Jamboard? Okay, there you go.
Yes.
I don't know, can you see that?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, so there's a whole bunch of things. So we were just talking all over the place. You'll see that I think the one person started off by a very interesting statement, which was, you know, if we just taught them better, they wouldn't want to cheat. And I thought, wow, that's a very good way of looking at it. So I think it was all, you know, one part of it was one way to get around sort of the cheating sort of environment is that we create the environment where cheating isn't really it's something that doesn't come up. In other words, it goes back to what's your motivation for being in this particular course. But another person did point out that, that motivation is a huge issue, particularly because in most of our courses, one of the big issues is that we are actually trying to do two different things. So on the one hand, as educators, our goal is for them to learn something. But at the other end of it, at the end of a course, it's a transaction, they get a mark, and that mark is something that's good for something else. And so, so the problem is that those two functions are tied together, and in many cases, it's the gatekeeping, which is actually more in the minds of a student than anything else. And it's that gatekeeping part of it that leads to all the cheating, because if the goal is to get through the gate with the best, the maximum, whatever, then you do whatever you do to get there, rather than the other goal, which is to learn something. And so that actually was one of those things. So as long as we can find a way to get around the fact that that's actually those two things, and to realize that most students, a lot of students are more interested in the gatekeeping than the learning part of it. That's an unfortunate part of it. The other thing that came up also was in terms of, so that led us to think about things like, well, how do we actually evaluate students? And so there was a lot of talk about things like more low stakes activities, portfolios, movement way to things which are more project where they can demonstrate what they're actually doing. But then there's also the resistance from students that they'd rather not spend so much time and effort, because again, there's that gatekeeping aspect of it. It's awful lot of work. And I have this all the time. No, sir, I don't want a project, just give me a test. It's a lot easier for me to study a test and get my mark than it is for me to do this rich activity where I have to spend so much time in order to get like an 80%, like I'd rather just do a test. So there is that whole element of it as mindset and motivation that goes into it. But I think one of the things is that it is really a matter that we do have to sort of go back and think about that larger thing. What are we trying to achieve, and how can we sort of separate the gatekeeping aspect from the learning aspect of it? Because in our heart of hearts as educators, we want them to learn stuff. We want them to come out of our courses with good skills, even if they don't think they need those skills. But it's hard to do it when at the same time there is that huge gatekeeping aspect to it. So I think that's one of our big takeaways from that. How do we separate those two things in a way in order to be able to achieve that? So I'm going to stop sharing now. I think it's, I know Miroslav is the next person, I think.
Yeah, please, Miroslav. Thanks,
Okay.
Henry.
Yeah. Actually, I like being second because Henry already said many things that I now don't have to repeat. So we had similar discussion in my group. One thing that came up is the issue of oral exams or oral conferences in high school classes. And it turns out that the students experienced some problems. They were stressed. Actually, the word tears was mentioned, and that some students complained. But it turned out, I think I'm interpreting correctly, it was not so much the environment of the examination as much as the fact that students had to learn a large amount of material in a relatively short amount of time. And then on top of that, this kind of oral thing did not really work well with them. So maybe it's not so much as I said, the environment, but just the fact that the learning had to happen in a different way than usual. And the students actually they wanted paper and pencil rather than just see, when you have an oral exam, you usually talk more about concepts, understanding, and you don't really test procedures as much. So that was one issue. Okay. Like what Henry said, a good way to reduce cheating would be to create an environment and few people talked about it, and John Michael mentioned some of his things. Environment where people can succeed, when people can see that actually things work. So when they can learn that they can really rely on their own abilities and the knowledge and skills to figure things out. But of course, there's this other thing of extreme pressure to perform because of what Henry calls gatekeeping. I mean, think about grade 12 kids who want to go to university. Think about kids who are in our life sciences program who want to go to medical school. You cannot take too many risks. If you don't do well in certain courses, you are not going to get to your goal. So unfortunately, cheating comes from pressures really to perform, not to learn, right? But really to perform because there's something that you want to do, you know. I mean, we always say, well, we ask people, well, did you pass your driver's exam? We don't ask our kids, did you learn how to drive, right? That's also like a kind of a gatekeeper. Okay. And then Henry mentioned project-based thing. We had an opinion where, actually I forgot who, somebody said that project-based things were exhausting for students, but they found a compromise by combining project-based and traditional ways of assessing. So Judy asks, is that what we are teaching is wrong? Is that we are teaching it wrong? Well, see, we didn't discuss it, but I mean, in the afternoon, for instance, there'll be sessional assessment, and we touched upon the fact that one way to actually reduce assessment, to reduce cheating, is to have more creative assessments. So to rethink our questions, to rethink how we evaluate what our students have learned, you know. Of course, you see, when you teach, there are always two things. There is a teacher and there is a student, right? You cannot change one without changing the other, or you cannot just put all pressure on one and no pressure on the other one. But that was not part of our discussion. One other thing that was mentioned is that now that we are online, things are very different, and therefore test preparation should be part of teaching, in a sense that you cannot just do what you normally do and then give a test, which is now online in whichever form, but that your instruction, maybe a few weeks leading towards a test, has to prepare people mentally and otherwise for the way they were going to be tested. I think that's a pretty useful comment. One other thing somebody mentioned, so Henry mentioned, I think, low stakes assessments and portfolios. Well, they might work, except in a university setting, and I discussed this with my colleagues. You're taking 5 courses as a university student, and assume that you have many low stakes assessments in each course. A student could easily end up with 50 or 60 things over a semester that they have to do. So you can never plan a course to be just your own course on a desert island, isolated from everything else. And I'm feeling guilty because in my course, I do have participation. I have 3 tests, I have 3 assignments, and I'm asking myself, am I actually asking too much of my students? Again, knowing that there are other courses where they have to do the same, you know. And then there's another thing, which is kind of related. We only touched the point, and we were cut off on mental health. See, when we plan a course for students on the first day of classes, where they're all healthy, motivated, enthusiastic. But now comes November, people are tired, exhausted, hit with more and more and more things to do. So this is another thing that should go into our planning of our courses, especially online. Instead of trying to do more and more and more in November, you should do less and less and less. However, many people need to catch up. Many people need to do whatever. And now November is going to be extremely loaded with things rather than being the other way around. Okay, so I just invite members of my group to add something to what I've said, or to correct if I didn't say something wrong or misinterpreted, please go ahead. Okay, then, well, thank you.
All right, thanks, Miroslav. So the third topic is student engagement. So Mona, please.
I'm going to try to share my screen with everyone on the Jamboard we completed. Can you all see my screen now?
Yep.
Okay. We had very interesting discussions in our group, and we looked at continuous assessments and feedback as it relates to virtual delivery of courses, meaning that instead of having two major assignments components, we know November students are starting to get tired, wear out, have multiple mini assignments that build to that final assessment. And again, we have to be mindful of what Miroslav was just mentioning, that student may have 50 other things to complete. So that balance is quite delicate in terms of what we can look at. Other discussion points for engagement says creating time to have conversations in breakout rooms. I think one of our group members in that group said, I put the students in breakout rooms. I tell them I'm not going to come. This is your space. You can communicate freely with one another, and maybe check in towards the end with those students so they have an opportunity to engage with themselves in the online world. We also discussed about creating an environment and setting the rules in a classroom where students are free to make mistakes, and they can easily, comfortably make those mistakes, and we teach them the process of learning. So making mistakes is one part of that, and students helping each other came up as well in the chat sessions of courses. We see that students are helping each other. When a professor asks a question, you may get 3 different answers to a particular math problem, and they're each trying to solve where the other person went wrong. And that's where really learning happens as well. They're helping each other. Creating those communities of learners is important, really, in the digital world, where they can have those senses of connection. So if there are opportunities for meaningful projects, group discussions that they can work together and help build that would be great. The other things for professors teaching the courses or teachers teaching, have regular check-ins with the students. Are you following me? Are there any questions? Some of the best faculty pause and ask questions before going through a full lecture. So it's good to take a moment to ask if there are any questions within that. One challenge in the online world, one of our speakers put a note, how do you generate enthusiasm in the online world? And we debated the idea of perhaps that authentic self comes through that engagement, comes through the faculty or the professor, or perhaps you can make connections with that curriculum to other discipline that student is interested in. They may not be all mathematics bound type of degrees, but if there are ways that you can make those meaningful connections between your curriculum and a business concept or an engineering concept, I think that would engage the students even more. Another one of our professors said that bring those questions that really hook the students' attention. So again, this was going after an engineering concept and really giving that question as a hook to start that conversation within a group of students. And at the same time, I think some learning happened for the professor as well that wasn't so familiar with that concept or may have not been part of her discipline. Again, asking the student what works best for them comes from that student-centered mentality and helps really the professor to engage them differently. What's working, what's not working, and really move on to adopt those courses.
And as you can see, the Jamboard looks really busy. We had 3 pages. First page, we posting all the challenges, and then we have all the ideas. and success stories. Unfortunately, with the time limit, we cannot go over all of them. So in the discussion, we focused on some challenges and we try to end up with ideas. We have a positive notes. So we try to find solutions for those challenges. So first one, we touch some topics are similar as what appeared in Mona's groups. So we also talk about building relationship. It's not just between professor and students, it's also between among students. This is very easy task in classroom because students can talk among themselves and professor can easily just walk around and talk with them. But in class, we have some ideas, including using icebreaker beginning of class, get to know students more and students got to know professor, or professors post conditional statement and the students can have a thumbs up or have some emotion posted or clap that can engage students. However, that's only applied to Zoom. So if any of us using Blackboard Collaborate, we do not have that available. Another idea is using breakout room so that students can actually work together and get to know each other and support each other. The second challenge we focused is large classes. So for classes have 50 plus or even 60 plus students, faculty was saying we'd be overflowed by emails, even have to work weekends or weekday evening to write back. So the ideas we come up is because lots of students ask the same kind of questions, looking for where is the course outline, what's the textbook, what calculator, how many assignments going to be. So our idea is create a Padlet with all the frequently asked questions. So if your students ask you this, send them the link. They can go find the answers. Rather than us ask same questions. Another idea is someone had a scavenger hunt. So at the beginning of school, so like where's syllabus, how many assignments do you have? And students have to go find the answers, and that really engaged them to know more about the course. Another group member mentioned she would always use an announcement feature after every class with links to all of the resources students need and make sure all the things students need are at multiple places so that students can easily access. That would also reduce the emails we have to write. In terms of students' attendance, also same challenge relating to large classes. One of the group member mentioned they would use a live poll in class, have students engage, answer questions, and that can keep students, keep the participation high. So the third challenge we talked about is in class ability to just drop in to check on students' work, check on learners. So the ideas we have is to have students pick up peers that in the breakout group they want to work with and have one person share screen, the other people navigate and contribute ideas. And as professor, you'll be able to drop in breakout rooms and to check on them. Not as great as what work out in classroom, but that's the best we got here. But also, we also raised the issue of concerns about having breakout groups for younger kids because you cannot always monitor what's happening in the group. Now, the fourth challenge we had talked about is how to draw math equations or charts on whiteboard. So people mentioned they use Microsoft Whiteboard, iPad, PowerPoints, and different tablets, and also maybe have pre-typed notes with complicated math equation or charts on it. The last challenge we briefly touched on is health issues relating teaching online. People been sitting all day long, writing emails and teaching. So one university have outdoor ed support and would have people all stand up, do some movements, which is great. And also maybe check on work ergonomics resources, make sure you are in the right position when you teach so that you don't put extra stress on your neck or your lower back. Yeah, that's all from our group. Any group member, you have anything to add, please? If not, then that's all for our morning session. Next is lunch break, and we'll be back at 12, and we're right on time. That's perfect.
Okay, welcome back, everyone. We have 3 more really engaging 5-minute talks for you, followed by breakout room discussions and a debrief. Without further ado, I'm going to introduce our next guest to you. Our next guest talk is on support at home. It's Alex Rebeck. Alex Rebeck is a graduate from U Waterloo's mathematics program. He's been a long-standing tutor at Humber, at the Humber Math Center for Support, and he's developed math for moms and dads, and is a part-time professor teaching business finance for business students. So welcome, Alex. We're ready to have your presentations up. Let me stop sharing my slides. Okay. Are you able to share your screen, Alex?
It had me muted and I had to have a host let it. So yeah, I'll share my screen now. Is everyone able to see this okay?
Perfect.
Yeah, thanks for the introduction, Mona. Yeah, I'm Alex, and I'll be talking about support at home briefly. So just a couple of things to start. So why is support at home important? Students, they need to practice what they learned at school. If they just learn it in the lecture, then it's difficult to actually gain a deep understanding of the topics if they're not practicing it at home. And also it's important because maybe they feel more comfortable with a family member helping them as opposed to asking a teacher. One important question that we should ask is, how do we help parents become better at supporting students? If parents had a bad experience with math in the past, that could reflect in the student. They could pass it on. The parent didn't enjoy math. The student sort of feels the same way, and then it just doesn't help with the mindset of that you can learn this. So we're just going to look at a couple things that parents could use, some simple tricks for supporting students at home. And to do this, we're just going to look at a very basic math question. So this question, it's just a simple money question. We have 2 quarters, 2 dimes, and a nickel. How much is that worth? So this question seems very, very simple. But it's important to remember that if you're helping a student with this, they may be struggling with this and it may be very difficult for them. So a good place is to always start by asking some questions to sort of understand where is the student coming from. So for example, in this case, do you know what cents and dollars are? Or do you know how much a quarter is worth, to sort of understand where they're coming from? And then even just providing resources for the student. So for example, this legend here says how much a quarter is 25 cents, a dime is 10 cents, a nickel is 5 cents. If you have actual money, you can show that to the student, make it visual, and making sure that they understand where these things are coming from instead of just assuming that they would know this. So again, that's a very easy example. But there's some helpful tips that come from that. Your child is likely asking a problem because it is difficult for them. So it's very important to be patient. Another thing that would be helpful for parents to know is it's okay not to know everything that your child is doing. This can be actually a very helpful way to show your child how you would solve a problem that you don't know. So maybe you can go through with them, okay, I'm not sure how to do this, but let's work on it together. Let's look through your notes. Let's research together some topics and see if we can figure it out. Teaching your child to be resilient as opposed to assuming, oh, I have to know everything to be able to help them. Another tip is maybe having a similar time and spot each day. So maybe, okay, after supper at 6:30 to 7, every day we're gonna work on math together. Limit technology for distractions, things like that. So that could be helpful. And another thing that we should really be focusing on is it's important to understand the process of the problem than just receiving the right answer. So that was sort of talking about what we talked about in the morning, the learning versus like the gatekeeping. Students are focused on just getting the right answer to get the mark. But if we can shift that to understanding the process, then that can help them focus on the learning aspect. And then so some discussion prompts. I won't go over this in too much, but in discussion, we will look at how do we help parents become better at supporting students? What does a successful parent-student interaction look like? And there's a couple other things if we have time as well. And then I just wanted to share, there's some resources here. Just some helpful ones, like there's Ontario links on this. There's like a Toronto District School Board links for learning math. So don't just try and do it on your own. There's some links on the internet that can be helpful. But yeah, that's it for me then.
Thank you so much, Alex. I know as many of us try to support children studying at home, this is quite a hot topic, that how do we provide the necessary support if our backgrounds are not necessarily math or that subject matter, and how do we navigate the online world on top of all that. So thank you so much. Without further ado, I'm gonna share another screen and present our next speaker with a group. Many of you know Miroslav Lovik. He's a Fields Committee member. Miroslav has taught at McMaster for many years, and this semester he's teaching his favorite differential geometry course. Thinking about cool ways of presenting stuff and designing good problems keeps him happy. And I think there's some references to social distancing. You keep your 2 meter distance, wear a mask, and is a disciplined citizen. He misses traveling quite a bit and is somewhat content with substitutes, which include walking in the woods, reading, managing the dynamic ecosystem in his backyard, and drinking beer. So that is a lovely introduction. Without further ado, I'll pass to Mir to speak on assessments.
So good afternoon, everyone. I have one slide that I wish to share. There it is. So unlike some other things that actually happened, the pitch for this one is positive. So in other words, in spite of many problems we have experienced when moving online, I mean, the top one being cheating, there are some good positive outcomes. And one of them is the fact that we have at probably every level seriously rethought assessment and came up with some really good stuff. So that's what my breakout room is going to be, one of the breakout rooms is going to be about. Just a few general thoughts and hints. Now, just one reason why actually cheating became such a big problem is that historically, my university, and I think I can speak in general, universities were not willing to engage in a discussion about academic dishonesty, partly because of public relations, whatever else, but we were really caught as deer in headlights because we did not have any advance warnings about it. One other thing we have learned, and that's the third bullet initially, is that now that we have online assessments, now that they have access to all kinds of materials, well, how do you study for such a test? And the experience of my first test opened my eyes. I made it too long, I have to admit that, so students told me there wasn't enough time. But then I looked at about 20, a little bit over 20 tests, and I realized that it was actually a lot more than that. I also talked to a few students, and we came to a conclusion is that just because you have all resources available, you cannot count on it in a sense of studying in such a way that you don't really try to memorize many things. You still have to remember important concepts, because if you have to look up every single thing in your notes. And now keep in mind, the notes are online. It's not so easy to find the right lesson, to find a place where it was taught and find what you need. So lots of students, I think, are wasting their time on assessments, trying to go through their notes rather than trying to commit some important concepts to memory and then work from memory. Okay. So I'm part of what is called First Year Math and Stats in Canada. community, and we have talked a lot. So assessment is really at the top of our agenda. And here I'm listing only some strategies that were suggested and which actually have been implemented at different places. I'm sure there are many more. For instance, frequent lower stake assessments. But as I mentioned in the morning, I think, there's also a problem with us thinking about our course as the only course that students take. So we tend to sometimes be overly happy, online happy with things. So we have clickers, we have surveys, we have all of that stuff. And then we don't multiply that by 5 to see how much actually load, how huge load that is for all students. So we have to kind of, this is good, but we have to kind of be moderate in what we do. Give harder problems and more time. This is another option which I also did contemplate, but if you schedule your test within your student schedule, so it has to be 50 minutes. I cannot have 2 hours because students have another class after mine. But what I tried to do was the third one. I tried to do a longer assessment so the students focus on their work and have no time to communicate. But I overdid it. Actually, I made it too long and there wasn't enough time. Questions with unique wording. Somebody mentioned that there are very few math problems with the word enchiladas in it. So that's something, but now not all of us should use it. And then another option is to create different versions of, suppose you have 5 questions, you create a pool of questions for each of the questions. And for instance, my learning management system can pick randomly a question from each pool and create almost unique test. But this is huge amount of work. So instead of me preparing 4 questions for a test, for my class, I would have to prepare at least 6 versions in each. And that's fairly difficult. Okay. So this is strategy, but also we rethought content. So for instance, you can ask for counterexamples in situations where students can come up with many different ones, so that there isn't kind of like a unique one that everybody has to state, but many different ones. On my problem set in geometry, I gave lines with no words. So it's part of a proof, but students have to identify exactly which result has been used with every equal sign that's there. How do we pass from one line to the next? In other words, they have to complete the proof with words. And then at the end of the day, identify what the theorem is about. Okay. Reverse traditional questions. What I mean by this is the following. A colleague of mine gave a complicated function to her students. And instead of asking them to graph, she told them, go to Desmos, graph the function. But then her question was, write the function as a piecewise function. And she was shocked to see how very few students could actually do that. See, we usually have piecewise functions and then you do whatever you do with it, but now it was the other way around. And this did not really work well, but actually it's a good question. So this content part is what I think is the best possible thing we could have had. Of course, we already did use counterexamples, or what I mean by an unexpected question. I'm teaching geometry and there is one question on my problem set where actually you have to draw something. Even though it's geometry, it's kind of, it's unexpected to actually ask people to draw. So there's a curve, there's a formula according to which some other curve is created and you have to sketch that other curve. By the way, there's no way you can Google this. So you actually have to think about it and do it yourself. So in my group, I hope we'll focus on the 2 things. So the assessment strategies and probably adding to this list of content suggestions so that we can have even richer assessments. Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much for really engaging discussion on assessments. There is so much to be discussed on assessments alone, and hopefully the breakout sessions will do a better justice to the topic. Let me share my screen to introduce you our next speaker for the day. And I've heard in the background from our moderators organizing the session, we hope to conclude the session at 1 o'clock. So the breakout sessions may be rather shorter today. without further ado, I would like to introduce Teresa Mosher to you. The topic of her presentation is challenges in elementary. Teresa is also a math education committee member. And along with that, she's a STEAM STEM itinerant teacher at the Brant Haldimand Norfolk Catholic District School Board, and has previously served as the department head of mathematics at the secondary level. So welcome, Teresa. I'll pass it to you, and I'll stop sharing my screen in a second. Okay, you might have to unmute.
The host.
We can hear you now, Teresa.
Oh, can you? I'm sorry, typing away. Thank you for the introduction. Just give me a second, sorry. Okay, everybody good? Because I can't see my screen or my slides yet. Can I share my screen maybe?
Please go ahead and share.
Just give me a second.
No problem.
So Mona, if you have a copy, either Mona or Kate, if you have a copy of Teresa's slides.
Hang on, they're coming. I thought the padlock was going to do it for me, but okay. Host disabled participant screen sharing. Welcome to the world of technology. Can you see my screen?
Nope, try again.
How about now?
It's starting to load.
Sounds like a Virgin telephone commercial. Can you hear me now? Can you see me now? Well, while my screen is uploading, let me know. Give me a thumbs up when you see
Teresa,
it.
we can
see it. Perfect.
Good
Yep.
stuff. Okay, so I am keeping, I was in high school, I moved to elementary STEM, and they do things very differently. So I'm going to keep in with the theme. Happy Halloween, everybody. Here we go. Elementary teachers are faced with many challenges this year as they struggle to meet the needs of their students, implement a new math curriculum, and teach remotely. And in other words, AKA the perfect storm. So closing the gaps for students, many students have met a bit more than half the expectations last year when we went off on COVID. So they haven't met the full expectations for this present school year. Students are struggling to be motivated and engaged and to keep in with the routine of schoolwork. Remote classrooms are difficult, especially for those at-risk students. So I went and decided to add a little bit of being a little bit optimistic. Teachers recognize these gaps and are willing to help close them. Remote learning is organized in a regular scheduled classroom meeting so that students are accustomed to the routines and rules that hopefully resemble a regular classroom. Some flexibility to work with students in small groups and one-on-one. The difference here is that you can work with students one-on-one, but they are usually must be supervised by a parent or caregiver. Okay, just a little bit of fun there. Okay. So the new math curriculum, many teachers are feeling overwhelmed, understanding how to plan and how to navigate through the long-range math plans. Where to find resources. Teachers are struggling to find the time to prepare and feel comfortable teaching the new math curriculum. Understanding the meaning, benefits, and the challenges of a spiral curriculum. Difficult to collaborate and brainstorm ideas, best practice remotely. And let's not forget the actual coding application in mathematics as well. Being optimistic, administrative teams continue to show their support by reassuring teachers that their efforts under these circumstances are appreciated. We have the help of the Ministry of Education website, student achievement teams and colleagues. Teachers are starting to feel a little bit more optimistic about finding the resources and teaching the new math. The new math curriculum is largely based on the idea of spiraling, which allows students to constantly revisit previous concepts repeatedly. This approach lends itself well to most recent, most consistent, since students have multiple opportunities to master those skills. Teachers can also meet remotely by working online themselves, by exactly what we're doing here, sharing our screens and having private, online meetings. Coding we're moving into the 21st century way of learning, and math is no different. I believe it was like we're teaching the math, but we're using the powerful tool of coding to help us do that. Okay, you can't scare me, I'm a math teacher, haha. And remote learning, the challenges, reports have suggested that remote learning is not as beneficial as in-class instructions. Remote learning, particularly the primary and junior levels, consistent of teaching not only students, but you're also teaching their parents because they're always in the background. When there is more than one learner in the household, lessons from each remote classrooms are echoed and both students and teachers are distracted. I had the pleasure of being taken out of my role and moved into remote learning for 1 week with 1 day to prepare. And that was very, very distracting. Other distractions such as just regular dogs, phones, people in the household. Some teachers have realized that remote teaching, in our board, this is what we experienced, because not only did we hire for in-school instruction, but we had remote learning. Plus we were short on teachers. We had teachers that went into the profession of remote learning, or I should say the profession of teaching, but remotely, and didn't like it after 1 day. And we were scrambled to fill in the places, and our whole STEM team had to take their place. In many boards, the shortage of teacher and remote learning administrators continue to scramble to hire quickly. So the optimistic part of it is that remote learning provides opportunities for students to learn social emotional learning skills and mathematical process through positive reinforcement, student engagement, and discussions. Remote classrooms are scheduled at regular intervals, trying to keep it in, again, same routine, allowing the students to have an agenda to follow, as if they were in the classroom. The positive outcome is building community, that we are truly all in it together to benefit our young learners. Teachers are invited into students' homes. Again, a big part of building community. Many teachers are scheduling remote classrooms meetings to accommodate multiple learners when possible. And then when schedules don't match, teachers are posting their lessons online and providing parents various forms of communication, whether through discussion boards and phone calls. If you have an access to a computer, the great thing about remote learning is that you can teach from anywhere. Happy Halloween, everybody. Thank you.
What's pause? Like my...
There we go. No. It's just to the organizers. Thanks.
Okay.
I'm sorry for interrupting.
Oh, no problem at all. And then we're also talking about the difficulty with some parents are expecting a lot from the teachers, where some teachers are having to teach online and in person at the same time. And the parents are expecting, oh, why is the teacher so far away from like the computer, but they don't realize that they're teaching in person as well. So even just communicating better to the parents what the expectations of the teacher are. So we talked about that a little bit as well. But yeah, that's sort of what we covered in our discussion.
Thank you so much. And the next presenter that was hosting the support at homeroom, maybe they can share.
That's me.
Comments. Perfect. Thank you so much.
Yeah, so we also had a group talk about support at home. We have a smaller group, had an intimate discussion. We all got a chance to know each other. So we talk about first, creative, effective learning environment, how to reduce distraction for our children. We talk about ideas parents stay close to the children and watch what they're doing online, so that make sure they are on the class screen rather than going to YouTube or anything. We also have set parents set limits so that students will not be able to have access to the inappropriate content. In terms of follow schedule, if kids have different deadlines they have to maintain for different assignments, our idea is leave kids to be in charge. Now again, that's depending on how mature your kids are, but with some involvement and mainly rely on children, that would help them to be independent with their tasks. We also talked about student, parent, teacher triad. Now, with teaching online, made everything so transparent. Teaching used to happen in classroom, but now parents got to observe all the teaching happening. And the parents' involvement could become a support for teacher, but it can also become a distraction if they have like many different comments. So our group members think because teachers are under a lot of stress, we should focus on only provide positive feedback. Whatever the teacher have done that worked very well, we should let teacher know, rather than giving lots of negative comments and say you should do this, should do that. Another thing is it would happen that teacher will face different demands. For example, some parents want due dates for assignments, some don't. So we'll just have to rely on teacher to do what they think is the best. There has to be a balance between what people want and what people need. So we will have to rely on teacher. And also you just can't make everyone happy. Now, another thing is for parents, we need to identify the priority. The priority is our kids' learning. So it's not necessarily make sure everything's done perfectly. So let's give children a break, because even 4 or 5-year-old, they still can feel the uncertainty and the weight because during this COVID time. The last thing we'll talk about is well-being of students, which already mentioned a few things earlier. So our group members suggested to have children connect with their friends online. Now that's one thing. Also, depending on your comfort level, you may have them have play dates or play with kids in the neighborhood. This would be especially challenging or necessary to arrange such play dates for the only kid, only child, or if they have multiple kids, but their age like widely gapped, then you have to give them chance to socialize with other kids. And also from teachers' perspective, they could support and offer lots of silly games, or during the break time, let students socialize with themselves, give them polls, activity that's not related to a curriculum, or maybe even do role play, have kids learn and have fun and get to socialize. So that's all from my group. Thanks.
Thank you so much for that. Next topic of the breakout session, we're on assessments, and we have Miroslav and Kara on those. Miroslav, over to you, please.
Okay, thank you. So a few things we talked about in more or less random order. In terms of elementary grades, we heard a fairly serious concern, namely that kids are given an online test and they're unsure on how to actually approach such a test. So for them, there's a big difference between face-to-face and online. And although they are given instructions, they, the teachers talk to them about taking tests online, there still seem to be difficulties with it. See, in some sense, that's related to one of the triggers we had, which basically is a statement which all agree. Well, if you want to assess something, you have to basically teach that thing. So if you want to assess complex reasoning, then you have to teach complex reasoning. So in other words, so now one thing we have to do is, on top of that, is we have to teach students actually how to take tests. And I can reassure you that's not just elementary issue. I'm sure it's in high school, and definitely it's issue in universities as well. One other thing we mentioned is that, well, it could be fun assessment like escape rooms. Well, the problem with that is that, of course, it takes time, but definitely I think it's a good idea. It's fun. So if I have time, I might try to do one of these. But, you know, the issue is that it takes time to design all of these things. And also you want to make sure that everybody is included. And if you have larger classes, or in university, if you have like 150 students, it's difficult to keep track of everyone. Another suggestion is to actually ask complex questions where you would grade the process. So what ideas did the student have? How far were they able to develop certain idea? So not to worry about an answer, but to actually grade thinking, grade ideas, approaches, things like that. But again, as I mentioned, if you want to do that, then we have to teach how to do this in the first place, because otherwise our students will just go nuts and they'll be very unhappy because they expect that they have to get to a final answer to get full grades. Okay, I think that's all. Probably Kara has, I'm sure she has some more things to say, but from my group, this is it. Thank you.
Thank you. Over to you, Kara. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah. Yes. I'll try to summarize the many very interesting talks. Many things have been touched on. There's a lot of overlapping thoughts today. I'm going to start with something I haven't heard from Peter. I hope you don't mind me saying so. He has 48 hours for the test. And so it's this idea, like we've heard the two extremes, you know, I've heard shrinking the time for the test so you're accessing knowledge, you know, you're less likely that they're looking at notes or something, but then there's this idea of what if they have almost too much time, you know, and the different things and some thoughts that came with that. The advantage was clarifying, like he was available to ask questions, which I think, in my opinion, you know, I don't think I'm the only one, but it addresses this panic and this fear of the test that's coming up, that if you're unsure of how you're supposed to do it, or if you're unsure of something that may not have to do with the content, it may just be, you know, more to do with answering the question. That also opens up that dialogue. I heard we have some great portfolios being done. We've been talking about different forms of assessment and needing to have, you know, as usual, it's not uncommon to have a large variety of tools to assess their knowledge, but the portfolios in this time, and I thought it was funny that it was just a side note, but you can see when they last accessed it now that it's on Google Sheets rather than a physical portfolio, right? Like if you're the last one to look at it, there's no reason to look at it again, but you know, to prompt that student, like it's an interesting way to track their looking at it and such. And we talked a bit about, you know, the changing timetables for a lot of you and how that's had to change assessment and what that looks like, and using the online time versus the in-class time. And anybody, you know, please message me if anyone in my group would like to chime in. Yeah, and we also want to curious, Kate and Mona, for later, are these going to be available for our attendees today? You know, they've had access to our Jamboards now, and I think maybe some of them are still giving me info, and I chose to collect a bit of data. Like I just would be curious about that.
On the issue of Jamboards, I think it's good knowledge and information for committee members. We will discuss as a committee if some of the information can be potentially shared or as knowledge sharing for the committees. Did that answer your question, Kara?
Sorry, I was reading and I also have it down here. We can get back to that, and I don't want to take away from other people's time to share their summaries, but I just wanted to put that out there. If Charles or anyone else wants to message me,
That's perfect. Okay, thank you so much. Next, we had challenges in the elementary, and it was Teresa and Judy. Maybe we'll move it to Teresa to open that, and I can. Teresa's asked me to share that screen for the Jamboard. Let me do that in a second. Here we go. Okay, Teresa, over to you.
Okay, so we addressed basically in general how we would have like address the challenges. So number one, I think we all discussed that it was relationships. Once you establish relationships, like you remember, these are students that are K-8, and in many cases, you're teaching not only the student but the parents. It is really important as to build those relationships up, whether you're doing activities, engaging the learner and the parent. You know, we have to be like flexible. We were discussing the creativity and how to engage these students. Young kids, if you had the opportunity to work with young kids, their distraction level is quite amazing. But so having things like guided play with them, you know, things like, we know coding is incredible. We've talked about AI before. We know how important it is. Introducing these children to certain activities of play, like Minecraft, Microbits, coding.org, all these major companies have done great movement towards mathematics. There's tutorials, there's learning. The great thing about engaging these students is that you're using the screen time in a, like, you know, a meaningful way. And at the same time, they're looking at it as play, but ultimately they are looking at, they're learning math. They're learning math all day long. And it's amazing because even from my own experiences in STEM, I will, like, we will be talking about some activity and to them, they end up with this wonderful masterpiece, but I'll make them freeze and say, do you know what? You did this. And I rhyme off all the math that's incorporated. And they're like, what? Really? And it's yes, but that can only happen when you as a teacher have, like, you know, you've been, you know, acknowledge there should be equity. You have to have flexibility. You have to be enthused and excited about teaching what you're teaching. I know even from a high school level, when I was excited, even though the kids, you know, especially grade 11U, they're all like, oh, come on, miss, you know, and it's like, you know, no, this is exciting and it's fun. And it's like, so they seen right through me, whether I was sincere or not. It's no different. Parents are the same. Like, and again, the challenges are that you're teaching children, but you're also teaching the parents. The positive side of that is that you are building community. And on top of that, you have, like, you know, sometimes a parent comes home, and parents that, like the majority, many of us are parents, but you'll get an assignment like grade 3 and think, you know, what exactly is the teacher asking us to do here? And they don't know, but this is a great opportunity for you to say, okay, this is what I'm talking about. So you're explaining it to the parent, which in turn will explain it to the child again. So, you know, you're actually seeing the lesson more than one time. Again, relationships are key. Caring was a huge issue. We also had looked at the languages. Like, not all students have parents that speak English. So it's hard for, you know, you're doing remote learning, you're trying to explain to a, you know, let's say grade 2, and then yet their parents, you know, speak any other language. They don't understand it, right? They know they're in the room and they're smiling at you and they're waving, but that's the extent of it, right? You need more support for parents in those cases to ensure the equity. What else was there? And again, my group, if anybody wants to chime in, please do. The other great thing is that the immediate feedback. Again, when I said when you have issues or challenges, you're online with the parents and the students, immediate feedback can be given. As far as, you know, descriptive feedback, as far as assessment, there are challenges as well, because again, in elementary, the teachers are not there, in any level, I should say, the remote learning and learning even how to navigate through devices and programs themselves. I have had challenges today. Today is my first day with Jamboard where I'm trying, and Mona has helped me out, and it's great. But when you're on your own, you don't have that other support. You have to, you know, call IT or get an IT involved, get a colleague involved. It's not instant.
That's perfect. Thank you so much for that debrief. Next, we have Judy. I'll stop sharing my screen. So if Judy, you have anything to share, please go ahead. Over to you. I don't know if you're muted. You may be muted, Judy. We can't hear anything.
Yeah, thanks. So this is a slide. I put a link into the chat that will take you to this slide if you're interested in having it. We talked about the gaps and challenges created by the gaps. We first were talking about the students and the spring closures, but we very quickly started talking about the teachers. When we mentioned that students would have gaps in their knowledge, because they won't be on the continuum for the revised elementary math curriculum yet. So maybe they're in grade 5 and they're doing coding or mathematical modeling or financial literacy, but they haven't done grades 1, 2, 3, and 4 in any of those new streams. So then somebody noted that, well, teachers are also struggling with those same gaps. And so a lot of our discussion became about the elementary teacher and the gaps and challenges with the elementary teacher. So the teachers are missing the content knowledge with the revised math curriculum. The teachers are moving more frequently now because of the pandemic and the situation created by the pandemic. So they may be teaching grades that they've never taught before. They may be moved from the grade that they started in September as a result of a reorganization in the school, and may find themselves teaching a different grade partway through the year. So of course there's just so much going on. Teachers like absolutely need some stability. Another challenge is in some boards, the consultants, the math coaches, and the math leads, instructional leaders at the board level have been pulled in to teach classes because of the teacher shortages, which reduces the supports available to these teachers who are facing so many new challenges. Of course, there's all those other challenges like trying to teach, virtually, if that's what they're doing, or teaching part virtually and part face-to-face, all those sorts of things. And that just the demand on a teacher's time is far greater now. And it was already really, really great. So we talked a bit about, okay, well, what can we do? And there are a lot of resources available, but teachers don't know that they're there. So how can we get that message out so that teachers know the quality resources that are available to them? That we don't have an answer to, but it was suggested that boards and perhaps the people who do the funding up above the boards need to really value teacher learning and provide time during the working day on a regular basis, regularly scheduled professional learning to support the teachers in all of the new learning that they're facing. But then I really like this last idea, which was that particularly now it's really important that teachers be granted permission to teach what's important and let the other stuff go. I know we were just looking at Damon Cooper talking about how, students will forget 80% of the factoids that they're presented with. So what's really important? What are those enduring understandings? What is that essential knowledge that they need to take them forward? And it was suggested that teachers probably are not in the position to be able to make those decisions well right now, particularly with the new curriculum, because they don't know where it came from, where it's going, and maybe their content knowledge just isn't where it needs to be. So an organization such as the Fields MathEd Forum might be able to quickly pull together an expert group to meet and try to parse the revised elementary math curriculum and pick out for the teachers of Ontario what really needs to be taught, and bring in like a wide range of experts who can help make those decisions on behalf of the teachers of Ontario. And that's where we are. So you should be able to access this Jamboard as a slide using that link. Let me know if you can't.
Okay, thank you so much. Today's discussions have been fantastic, speaking from a range of opportunities and challenges really in the post-COVID world, and what it means for educators in terms of adopting their methods, adopting new technologies, and really moving that continuum for the students and themselves as well. There's been tremendous amount of training, not only happening for students, but even for teachers and educators who've had to move to online, different classroom formats, have hybrid, have in person and many other challenges. So thank you all for really wonderful discussions. I really hope you've all enjoyed today's session. Next session would be a month from now. So we hope to see you next month as we plan our next session. Thank you so much for your time. We wish you well. Thank you. Bye, everyone.